always feel them are run things. When I hold the crown, there is one king. Me not care when you say what you done for me. When me never take a loss, why you come for me? Oh, I don't get it. I want to see.
All right, I think it's finally time we make this video. So what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Just want to give everybody a huge thank you that watched the last video that I made talking about my 6 months here in South Florida, what the journey has been. And today we're doing something a little bit different. As you guys can see, we are outside enjoying the beautiful weather here in South Florida. And I'm doing two things. One, or actually maybe like three things. Number one, talking about the differences between South Florida and Oregon, both from a personal perspective and a filmmaking perspective. And then also, we're testing out the DJI mic here. And as you guys can see, we're right next to a super loud water fountain, but I do have the noise cancellation feature on the DJI mic mini. So the audio that you're hearing from here is directly from that setting being on. So hopefully it sounds good. And if it doesn't, well, we're going to try to figure it out in post-production. Lastly, I was about to head out. Lastly, what I'm really doing is practicing being in front of the camera and talking. I really want to get better at doing that. It feels weird to set up the camera this far away with the tripod and talk into the mic, kind of talking to the oblivion. But I told myself that I was going to do it, that I was going to learn how to do it, that I was going to learn how to be uncomfortable, that I was going to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, with being in front of the camera. Plus, with all the advice that I give my clients, I'm hoping to just kind of put it on to practice right here and then. So with that being said, now let's get started. Let's talk about the differences between South Florida and Oregon. Number one, let's get started. And the biggest difference, I think, between South Florida and Oregon, or at least the most obvious one, is going to be the weather. It looks like this basically all the time here in South Florida. There's been a couple of rare days where it does rain all day, but for the most part, if it is going to rain, it kind of rains for like an hour, sweeps by, which makes it really convenient for you as a filmmaker, for me as a filmmaker, because I'm not having to reschedule shoots. When I schedule something and I have to shoot outside, I can basically count on good weather. It's going to look like this for the most part. So that makes it really easy to kind of plan out your day, to plan out the shoots, not having to reschedule. Versus back home in Oregon, obviously it was raining all the time. The weather was so unpredictable. The wind was sometimes so unpredictable that it would just make it hard for you to kind of shoot. And also here in South Florida, after spending my first fall and winter here, I can honestly say that it doesn't get cold like it does back home, right? I will say this though, and people from South Florida got to agree with me here, because this is something, while I don't have any scientific proof behind this, I can just tell you from experience that anything below 60 here might as well be what 32 degrees feels like back home. Again, I don't know the math behind it, I don't know the science, I don't know the conversion, none of that stuff. I can just tell you guys that 55 here might as well be like 32 degrees back home. You might as well throw on a hoodie, couple jackets. I can't explain it. I could just tell you that when I would see the weather app and I would walk outside, things didn't match. Alright, so the next item on the list of the biggest differences between South Florida and Oregon is going to be colors. The colors here in South Florida are vibrant. They are everywhere. There's street art just like this mural behind me everywhere. It doesn't really matter what part of South Florida that you go. You see yellows, pink, pastels. We've all seen movies, we've all seen shows of that Miami kind of look. Here in South Florida, I think every single place that you turn and look to, there's brightness to it. So what that means also from like a filmmaking perspective is when I bring my camera out, even in log form, I get excited to shoot because I know just how rich the colors are going to look straight out of camera when I do a little bit of color grading. And I think that makes it really, really fun. Now, back in Oregon, there's definitely some areas that you could say have a lot of street art, but from my experience, obviously that for the most part happens over in Portland, and a very specific part of Portland. Oregon's kind of like naturally gloomy state. I feel like the colors are a little bit more dark. They're a little bit more they don't pop as much in camera. Now, granted, I'm going to blame a little bit of that, like I said, on the weather / lighting over there in Oregon. But with here down in Miami, the weather being what it is, and you add these murals / colors everywhere, buildings are, entire homes are painted different colors here that you don't see back home. You know, you don't see a lot of orange houses, you don't see a lot of pink houses, you don't see a lot of green houses down in or over in Oregon, but you do see a lot of that here, and that's just kind of the again, like the natural kind of look down here. And so it doesn't feel out of place. It makes it really cool, and from a filmmaking / video perspective, it makes it so that you get the full range of colors that actually comes from the camera. Like, I really get to see what this camera is capable of on a color perspective, and I think that's made it super dope, and that's been super fun to discover here in the last 6 months in South Florida. Alright, so the next item on the list, traffic. Traffic here is absolutely insane. Back home in Oregon, I had, basically everybody has it dialed down where they know, hey, avoid these areas at this time, aka rush hour, so that you don't get stuck in traffic. But if you are one of those people that there's no way around it, you at least know, hey, you know, maybe it takes me 30 minutes to get to work, but to get back from work, it might take me 45 minutes, an hour, depending on the traffic. But you kind of already know what that is going to look like. Hey, I'm going to this part of Portland, or I'm going obviously through Wilsonville. I got to account for that when it comes time to scheduling things, when it comes time to making sure that you leave at the right time. Here in South Florida, any point in time and any point of the day, doesn't matter where you're going, how you're getting there, there's a good chance you're gonna hit traffic.
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It is 10:30 a.m. This is the freeway. Doesn't matter what time.
You know, there are times where I have left literally like 30-40 minutes earlier than what I thought, and I've still either been right on time or just been a little bit late. The other part that is different down here in South Florida is obviously the type of cars too. I could just go down to the gas station a couple blocks away and I could see a Ferrari, a Lambo, a Bentley, high-end cars that I definitely wouldn't see back home unless I was in Portland, and even then, I just never even knew what I was gonna see over there. Obviously a lot of Hondas, Subarus, and all that stuff. But all right, next item on the list is definitely going to be another one of the main reasons why people come to South Florida, why people know South Florida, why people know as Miami, and that is the things to do.
You know we don't play, stay out the way. Check out this look on my face. I'll come save the day. Give me my cape. Look at I'm flying away.
There is a world of a difference of things to do here in South Florida than there is back home in Oregon. Obviously, we all know that when it comes to like nature, during the 3 months that we do have good weather in Oregon, one of the coolest things that you can do is just be outside. Go on these hiking trails, go on these waterfall trails, go to the river, go to the ocean, do stuff like that. But that only comes for like a 3-month period, and you really have to go after it and you have to go get it. And if you're somebody like me, to be honest, like, I regret it now moving from Oregon, but I didn't really go on that much, I guess, nature experiences. Here in Miami, it's because it's a destination city, not just for the partying, but also for major businesses, conventions, events. There's always something going on here. Art, concerts, music. There's so many people coming in and out of the city all the time. But yeah, in general, outside of those conventions and events, there's just a lot more things to do. Like, there's a nice car. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about, a huge difference between South Florida and Oregon, is definitely the people. The kind of people that live in South Florida versus the kind of people in Oregon, the treatment, the whole 9 yards. So let's get started. Back home in Oregon, the majority of the Latino community happens to be Mexicano, Mexican. Every now and then you hear maybe some Guatemalans, some Honduranians, some Salvadorian. Here in South Florida, it's completely different. There are people from all over Latin America. Obviously, there's a lot of Cubans here, Dominicans, there's a lot of Argentinians, Brazilians. There's so much Latino community down here, so many different Spanish, so many different kind of tones and different phrases and similar things that you hear, but just enough different to be like, hey, where's this person from? And it's been a lot of fun getting a chance to go to like a restaurant. My valet driver is Cuban, the receptionist is from Venezuela, the server is from Peru, and then the chef is from Argentina. And you're hearing all these Spanishes all in one place, and you're trying to guess where they're from before they tell you, or like kind of use some of the words or tones that you hear to kind of guess where they're from. So that's been a really cool and unique experience. And the other part too is actually down here in South Florida, Mexicano, Mexican is probably the least heard of the Latino community. Like, I haven't really heard of a lot of Mexicans being down here. Like I said, it's a lot of Cuban, a lot of Dominican, but it's been a little bit of a culture shock, I guess, in that sense, if you want to call it that. But it's been really, really cool, really, really fun getting a chance to hear all these Spanishes, or all these different tones of Spanish, and then finding the words that, you know, that we do relate, or just hearing how they talk, and then getting a chance to relate to the people. So that's been a really cool experience. But yeah, the people in South Florida from all aspects are way different than the people back home in Oregon. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about, which is also probably the most important thing, to be honest, because it's a combination of all the things that we talked about today. The weather, the traffic, the things to do, the people, all leads to number 5, and most importantly, the opportunity that creates down here. There is always something happening down here in South Florida in every avenue: business, music, sports, entertainment, competitions, everything. Somebody like me who is in the filmmaking space, who wants to be working in all of these avenues, there is no better situation for somebody like me. Back home in Oregon, obviously there's, not to say that there's no opportunity for this, but there's obviously just a lot less in Portland, Oregon, especially when it comes to like things like sports teams. There's really only the Blazers and the Timbers to speak of, and of course the Thorns. But outside of that, there's not really other sports teams that you can shoot professionally. Oregon State, U of O usually have their own team, so that just makes it a little bit harder. Here, obviously, there's all the types of sports, the 4 major sports. There's minor sports that are professional here, so there's just endless opportunity on that end. But I do want to say you do not need to be down here in South Florida in order to create opportunity for yourself. In fact, I think the most important thing that you can do if you're an aspiring videographer, get really, really good at knowing your camera, knowing camera settings in general, knowing how to speak the language. If you're an editor, make sure that you get really, really good at editing. What I'm talking about is being able to turn things around quickly while still being creative. I know it's a lot to ask, but here in South Florida, everything is super fast paced. And if that is a goal of yours at some point to get down here in South Florida, you got to make sure that those skills are up to par. The rest of it really just comes down to mindset and being a good person. You know, obviously we all know that things happen on a day-to-day basis, regardless of whether you do a local shoot, whether you travel for work, you travel for a shoot, things are going to happen. So being able to have the mindset going into it, knowing that you're going to approach this the right way, that things are, regardless of how tough things may get, that you're going to approach it with the level head and make sure that things come out as best as you can. That's going to get you a lot further than anything else. So with that being said, if you have made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out. This was a little bit different for me, being in front of the camera, trying to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Luckily, there wasn't a lot of people where I was shooting, so there was a couple people that would pass by, but I would just kind of block them out and ignore them. It made it a little bit easier to shoot. Next challenge will probably be to try to do this in some capacity around people. I want to put myself in those situations to learn, to grow, to really go through it, because I have to tell my clients the same thing, you know, and when we're in this situation, it's so easy to be behind the camera. So I want to have this experience of being in front of the camera and learning to express myself, learning to be comfortable in front of the camera. And again, at the end of the day, really sharing advice that I hope is useful to you guys. If you guys found it useful, please let me know in the comments below. Again, let me know what other topics you guys want me to cover. Thank you guys for hanging out in this video. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.